Today, we are so pleased to welcome Heather Cowie and her colleagues Adam, Stephanie, and Julie. I have had the pleasure of hearing all of the presenters at the IPA conference in 2017 in Calgary and at the CNN conference in Vancouver. And I am so excited to have them all here as guests today. But before we launch into the presentation, there is a few pieces of information we would like to share with all of you. Following the presentation, there will be an opportunity to ask questions. Please use the Q&A icon located at the bottom of your screen, or it is on mine, to submit your questions. Kim will be moderating the Q&A. If you have any issues or want to provide comments, please use the chat box icon that you will see at the bottom as well. Today's presentation will be recorded, so if you would like to hear it again or share it with others, it will be available on our website tomorrow. But let's get on with why we are all here together today. We all know that when children are outside, they move more, sit less, and play longer. So that's why we are so excited to have Heather, Adam, Julie, and Stephanie as our guests, and look forward to hearing their City of Calgary experience and provide us with many details and learnings to give us all a sense of what creating a play charter and adventure playground can look like. Let me introduce our panel today. Heather Cowie. Heather has been working in municipal government for the last 25 years in various positions. Currently, she is the General Manager for Community and Protective Services for the City of Fort Saskatchewan. Heather is also the proud president of the Alberta Recreation and Parks Association and a founding member of Outdoor Play Canada. She was instrumental in bringing the International Play Association Conference to Calgary in 2017 and worked alongside Calgary colleagues to bring the Mobile Adventure Playground and Play Charter to life. Heather can now honestly say she is an avid outdoor enthusiast, and pictures of her trunk will prove it. And we also heard of her adventures over the weekend to prove that as well. Adam Bienenstock. Adam is an internationally acclaimed designer, builder, and researcher of nature-based play spaces and the founder of Bienenstock Natural Playgrounds. Adam has traveled globally to advocate for children's rights to nature play and to design spectacular national parks and playgrounds, and we're fortunate to have one of those playgrounds here in our own province in North Battleford. His resume in the natural playground industry is unparalleled. Highlights include creating campuses for nature play in Jakarta, following attacks by ISIS, and redeveloping the baby panda exhibit for the Toronto Metro Zoo. Adam lives and works at the forefront of the movement to connect children to nature. His bold, charismatic personality sets the tone for the entire company, and he's at his happiest when he's pushing executives, municipal managers, and educators out of their comfort zones. He sits on numerous advisory committees as well. His work is accessible, natural, and fun. Known for his wit and humor as a public speaker, Adam invites us to shed our inhibitions and play in the mud. He is the proud husband of Jill Bienenstock and father of 2 sons, Sam and Leo. He sneaks off to Northern Ontario when he needs to immerse himself in nature. He believes it's one of the most beautiful places on earth. Stephanie Won. Stephanie Won is a business and policy planner with Calgary Recreation. One of her first summer jobs in the late 1970s was at the city's Adventure Playground, and that's how she got hooked on play. She is excited to have been involved with the resurgence of the recognition of the importance of play that has happened over the past years. She is thrilled to share her love of play, especially in the outdoors, with her grandchildren, and is learning new ways to stay connected with them. Julie Guimond. Julie leads Calgary Parks' urban forestry team to manage and grow a healthy urban forest in Calgary through planting, maintaining, protecting, and advocacy. She has a passion for connecting people to our parks, open spaces, and forests through creating great space programs and partnerships. She holds a Bachelor of Science and Master of Science degrees and has worked in nonprofits and government to engage people to our natural environment in a hands-on and playful ways. Please help me welcome our guests today, and I'll turn it over to you.
Perfect. Can everybody see the screen? It's good. Okay. I'm going to try and go super quick. So how we're going to do this today, we're going to talk a little bit about Outdoor Play Canada. We're going to move on to the Play Charter. We're going to talk about the Mobile Adventure Playground, and then we're going to end it off with Adam talking about natural play and community development. So I want to leave time for questions at the end. So if I'm going to whip through this, try to go as fast as we can. Outdoor Play Canada, network of advocates, practitioners, researchers, supporters to promote, preserve, and protect outdoor or play in nature and outdoors for all people. Outdoor play is a valued part of our daily life for all people living in Canada. So super pleased to be a part of that. We know, and we talked earlier very briefly about the benefits of outdoor play. They move more, they sit less, and they play longer. Kids outside will stay longer, which is great. They learn to balance that risky play and their own safety, and then increased resilience, self-regulation, and skills for dealing with stress. I think we've always said I'd rather have a young person figure out their risk and their resilience at 5 than at 17, trying to navigate a situation where they don't have that framework to operate from. And we know blood pressure, cardiovascular, musculoskeletal, and then Adam's dad will talk about why it's so important for kids to be outside for their immune system. They need dirt. We need that stuff in our bodies to be able to function well. That's a worry that I have about mine. So in 2015, a position statement was created. It was informed by 2 systematic reviews, interpreted by Canadian experts, reviewed by 1,600 stakeholders. And it became part of a participation support that really started to galvanize this outdoor play movement in Canada to say they move more, get them outside. And so to date, there's almost 400 supporters of this position statement, including the Council of Chief Medical Officers of Health in this country. So what is the position statement? What has that done? So what? There are a few examples here that talk about the impact. There was a legal precedent that was done for the District of Saanich, ruled that they weren't negligent in a case of child getting hurt during a game of grounders. Municipal policy, Peterborough, outdoor gathering spaces must support healthy free play. A school culture shift, a principal in Renfrew County Catholic Board of Education prioritized outdoor play and student engagement in her school. And Adam will probably tell you that with his outdoor classroom, he's done a competition, call for interest for a free classroom, and has had free outdoor classroom, has had over 500 schools submit their interest to get that free resource. Natural health resource, nature and why it's essential for kids' brains, how they need to be outside for that brain development. And of course, the charitable sector strategic direction shift, which has really been the cornerstone of the Lawson Foundation, has invested $4.5 million in 18 projects between 2013 and 2018 to increase children's opportunities for outdoor play. Outdoor Play Canada was launched in September of 2019 at the Breath of Fresh Air Outdoor Summit in Ottawa, and our following strategic priorities: establish and operate the Outdoor Play Canada, provide leadership and strategic direction, serve as this credible portal of credible information, amplify efforts and successes, and convene and facilitate collaborations. Who was Outdoor Play Canada? Dr. Mark Tremblay, Dr. Mariana Brusoni, Dr. Frank Welsh, Dr. Rakim Mitra, and myself. I'm the only non-doctor. I take that very seriously. And I keep bugging them that I'm the honorary doctor in the group. These incredible people have such relevance and reach in the research that they are doing and the policy and the practices. So just a great deal of pride to be part of this group. And I believe Louise is on the call today as well. And she's our staff person for Outdoor Play Canada that helps us and keeps us moving and keeps us on track. So just a delightful group to be a part of. So again, part of our leadership and direction is we're doing a 5-year state of the sector report. So in 2015, we did the position statement. Where have we been and where are we going in 5 years? So we're working on that right now. And a part of that report, we're building an online library of outdoor play resources that you can go to at any time to gather information or research if you're trying to create something. That central portal for credible information. Again, when one of the opinion ed pieces that Dr. Mark Tremblay did at the very beginning of the pandemic was, if in doubt, send them out. It's okay for kids to go outside in the pandemic. Transmission is less likely to occur. That immune system that we need from going outside and connecting to community makes that isolation less isolating. To date, there are 157 supporters of this page. 2020 participation report card, again, you know, we're getting Fs. Our kids are not doing well. They're not moving. They're not outdoors. Less than a fifth of children and youth in Canada met all 3 behavior recommendations of physical activity, screen time, and sleep. And only 21% of our 5 to 11-year-olds engage in active play for more than 1.5 hours a day. This is pre-COVID, and then we'll pop over here. And 1 month after the World Health Organization declared our pandemic, less than 3% of Canadian 5 to 17-year-olds were meeting the minimum guidelines. So we took the public health orders very seriously, and we kept our folks inside. And I think the increase of screen time and the decrease of being outside is certainly concerning. And you can see how there is no real regional differences. And again, that information is all on our website. We regularly update our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram feeds, and it's part of that amplification of efforts and successes. We have over 100 blog posts, resource items, again, over 100, and a bi-monthly newsletter. And you can follow us on Outdoor Play at Twitter and again, Facebook and Instagram. Outdoor Play is cross-sectoral. As we grow, we are continually building those new connections because we all play a role and nobody owns this. This is a great venue to share and create opportunities for each other. And again, we're wanting that outdoor play as a valued part of our daily life. There is some pretty exciting stuff happening. Construction of a new multi-purpose iconic building on the National Capital. Commissioned property is about to begin. And this is envisioned to be the home of the Canadian Centre for Outdoor Play and excellence in outdoor play and early childhood education. Pretty excited about that. The other thing, if you are a member of Outdoor Play Canada, we're hosting a free screening of the documentary Chasing Childhood from October 21st to 25th for free for all Outdoor Play Canada members. Join us, become part of us, because together we're better. And I've always said whenever we hang out together, we get smarter together. And again, the benefits: professional identity, cohesion, engagement, development opportunities, stay informed, stay on top of what's happening, and recognition opportunities. So just wanted to do just a quick little overview about Outdoor Play Canada and our role in this country. I am now going to turn it over to Stephanie, and I will be your Vanna, Miss Stephanie.
Great, thanks, Heather. Yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the play charter that the City of Calgary has enacted with our community members. Just wanted to give a little bit of background. So Heather mentioned these are some of the key drivers, which was the participation position statement on outdoor play as well. We were awarded the 2017 International Play Association Conference. And when our director when Heather and Julie brought it forward to our directors, they said, well, great, anyone can do a conference, but we want a legacy piece. And so the legacy piece turned out to be the play charter and also the mobile adventure playground. Then as well, we had received a grant from the Lawson Foundation to work on the play charter and a mobile adventure playground concept. And so basically we had many things aligning. It was a perfect storm. And we're going to talk about how we created the play charter. And so the play charter, it's kind of fun because we have someone document our practice and how we got there. So the play charter, how to create a play charter, was developed by the University of Alberta, the Centre for Healthy Communities, and supported by the province of Alberta as well as ARPA. So next slide. And this is the lucky thing. We didn't have this how to play charter when we were doing this. So we kind of hit and miss, but what we had, the concepts was around the play charter. So it is around the vision of your community for what play could be, and also can be applied to organizations as well. And it's a commitment to support a shared agenda for play. And so these are some of the critical things that it includes, is around the need for values and a diverse population within your organization to come together to have a common vision, to develop the languages and goals and actions that are easily understood by everyone, and to have this collective impact that builds on individual and organizational strengths. So it's unique. Each charter will be different because of the organizations or the people that are involved in it. So next slide. And we built our play charter based on the collective impact model. And if you recall those three drivers that I talked about at the beginning, and the collective impact model talks about the need for an urgency of change. So we had both the participation position statement as well as getting up the International Play Association conference going. So we had the urgency for change. We had the financial resources from the Lawson Foundation, and we had the great champions within the City of Calgary. And not to get their egos going, but Heather and Julie were very instrumental in getting this going and talking it above to all the people above. I was more in a position at that time to get things action going from a practice point of view. So next slide. So in 2016, we started developing the play charter, and we had a group of organizations come together to discuss what our vision for play in Calgary would be. And so if you look at the how-to guide, it sounds so easy. And I've given this presentation to other groups, and they said, oh, wow, this looks so easy. But I have to caution people, it took about 12 months for us to get this going together and to actually agree on some of the things. Some of the things we found that was just the developing of common languages. So collective impact is great because you get many organizations from all different sectors coming together to talk about the same issues. And that is cool. The play part was so exciting for many organizations. But when we started talking, we found that people's definitions of play were very different. So it was over time, and the relationship building is what got us together to really understand and be clear on what we were talking about together, and leaving your sector hat at the door before you come to talk about play in the context of our group that we've called YYC Plays. And the other issue is around supporting risky play. So in the end, unfortunately, there were some organizations that felt they couldn't assign the charter because of our interest in risky play. So while we tried to work on consensus, in the end, we had to move, for some tough decisions, we had to move to a more democratic situation where people agreed or disagreed on things. So next slide. And there you see our beautiful play charter. 2017, it was signed. And as you can see from the play charter, well, maybe you can't see because it's kind of small there, but hopefully you'll get the PowerPoint slides. And you can see that on the two sides, we have the voices of the child. And so this was really exciting because we as adults did not want to be doing this for kids. We wanted them to be truly engaged in this. And you can see some interesting quotes from there. So why do you play? So down there I'm pointing right there on the right-hand bottom side, some of the answers were because they make friends, they have, and it's very fun. So yes, play is very fun. And then as you see in the middle portions of it, those are the commitments, what we believe in, our shared agreement, what we believe in, and what we agreed to do. And part on the bottom point was we agreed to all report back collectively on the impact that we had in play. Next slide, please. And so, yes, in 2017, here you can see our mayor being part of the signatory for the play charter. And in the end, we had three big things. We asked each of the organizations who signed on to the charter to sign on to do three big things of the 7 common goals that we had. So we felt those 7 common goals were things that we felt that if we all contributed together, we could have the greatest impact on play in Calgary. So 36 organizations signed on and pledged that they would support play in 3 of those areas. Next slide, please. And so in 2018, so during 2017 to 18, people worked on their individual actions for those 3 big things. And we actually did have a common reporting. And in the November 20th, the National Day of the Child, we had our big inaugural Play Summit, where we released our impact statements. And so look at, I mean, it's amazing when you look at the numbers of people. There only over 300,000 people were impacted by these 36 organizations in play. So people learned about play, and families changed the way they play. And then the exciting part is 2018, we had 54 organizations sign on to the Play Charter, which was fabulous. Okay, 2019. So 2019, we had the focus on inclusive play. And so again, this is the value of being able to leverage the work that was going on in the community. Jumpstart supported a beautiful inclusive playground in our city. Again, thanks to a lot of support from Heather and Julie, and of course, the Jumpstart organization. And this brought a lot of organizations to the table to help us to learn how to activate the inclusive playground. We had our Play Summit again on National Child Day, November 20th. Of 2019, and the exciting part of that is that one of the organizations from YYC Play took on the lead for that. So it was really exciting, because that's what we wanted, to move the Play Charter and the Play work into the community. We did not do an accountability report because the amount of work that was required was tremendous, and we weren't able to do that. And as well, we found, so 2 years out, organizations were changing. So the people that were the big supporters of play to begin with were no longer there, and the sense of urgency was no longer there. So we had, at the end of 2019, we were really re-looking at what we were going to do with our YYC plays and the Play Charter. So saying that, next slide, we decided in 2020 that we needed to look at how we are going to reignite our commitment, because again, the players have changed within organizations, and as well in the City of Calgary organization, Heather left, Julie changed her jobs, and that left it up to me and some other people to take up the torch. They provided a good foundation, but each of us are really different in the way we go about work and stuff like that. So we had some soul searching, and we got the YYC Plays groups together. And we decided, again, we wanted to look at what were our shared commitments. And so we decided that we would do a newsletter in 2020. We would do just minor networking meetings. We did work together on National Play Day, which is the first Wednesday in August, National Child Day. And then we realized, based on the Participation 2020 report card, and also the report from Raising Canada's Children on the issues that our young people are facing because of COVID, that we really needed to look at the outdoor play stuff for winter. And so that was our shared common interest. And so we had, on March 13th, we had 6 organizations who participated in our Winter Play Day. And we had increased collaborations amongst YYC Play organizations. So instead of, previously we would have done these things and people would be more siloed, but these ones, because of lack of resources and just understanding of what the COVID regulations were going to be as part of the day, we were a lot more collaborative. So it was maybe one of those COVID wins that brought us back together, because again, remember those 3 things that are good for collective impact is around the sense of urgency for change. So we had that, we had the champions, and not necessarily the resources, but we have a lot of interest in looking at play. Next slide. So what's next for the play, YYC Plays, we're going to be looking at our play mapping. So where are play opportunities available in the city outside play opportunities. We want to look at simplifying our impact report. We're going to have a smaller version of the Play Summit, and then we are committed to doing an increased communication. So you can see in the middle there is our Facebook page, and so there's a lot of interest in revitalizing that. So it's been great. We went through ups and downs with this, but I think we're back on the up and really understanding the importance of the collective and collaborative approach to play. That's it.
Awesome. I'll now turn it over to Miss Julie. Oh, Stephanie. That was awesome.
Hello. So as Heather says, I'm going to be focusing on some of the effort that we mentioned around bringing adventure playgrounds to Calgary. And so if you want to move on to the next slide, we really focused with regards to adventure playgrounds. Oh, is my screen not moving forward? We could go to the next slide, Heather.
Yeah, I'm trying. I'm trying really hard.
Perfect. I'll keep talking then. So adventure playgrounds, if you're not aware, are based here in Calgary. We worked on basing them on the European and even some other North American models. Unlike a traditional playground, our adventure playgrounds, they have no preconceived structure. Rather, there's loose parts, materials, even tools that we can manipulate. You can build, destroy, rebuild, and as facilitators, we can replace those over time. It's play that's led by the child. Although there's play facilitators who encourage that play, they don't direct it. And I think what's critical in it is that its risk in all of its forms is absolutely important in here. Here in Calgary, we made a choice to make our playgrounds mobile. And there are some really specific reasons for that. And I'll explain each of these elements over the next 10 minutes. So if you want to move to the next slide.
For some reason, it's not letting me do what I want to do.
Strange.
There you go. Okay.
Nothing on my network is letting me do what I want to do today. So what I thought I would start with is risk, because ultimately it's probably one of the biggest barriers a lot of groups will face. When we talk about risk, it isn't meaning that we're courting danger. It's through the eyes of the child. It's what a child sees as maybe thrilling or exciting, maybe even that small possibility of a physical injury. But what they're able to do is recognize it, evaluate it, and make their own choices based on their abilities. When we define risky play, we mean risk at high speeds, at heights. It might be hiding like the little boy in the box, which I know is one of Heather's favorite photos. It's rough and tumble. It can even be with tools or other challenges. It gives kids the freedom to climb as high as they want, explore those woods, play hide and seek. And from it, we've heard the benefits already earlier, that it's that confidence, the autonomy, the resilience, developing skills like problem solving, and learning to be able to understand their own limits. What I think is critical as we move to the next slide is it is based on adults believing in the competency of that child. And so for that reason, when we started down this path at the City of Calgary, we made a very conscious effort. I remember sitting with Heather Cowie at a picnic table, along with some of our colleagues at the Inglewood Bird Sanctuary, and we brought in our risk team right from the beginning. And in Calgary, our risk team is part of our legal department, but they hold a really special part in cities risk. And they brought these ideas before we even had funding to our insurance brokers and had those conversations. What was interesting is they came back with, okay, which might have blown Heather and I off of the seat of that picnic table. And what the answers were really logical, that we need to assess and identify the risks on the site, just like we do with every other program and asset, that we need to mitigate and manage those risks, that we even want to look at what existing programs and practices we have as precedents. So we looked at our day camp programming and parks programs. We looked at admissions that we have at swimming pools and park and plays, and even to our skate parks. We also looked at some of our internal parks employee handbooks, pieces like that, where we're out in those spaces, and how do we mitigate the risks in those. What our risk team also told us was not to contract the risk to other organizations, but as the City of Calgary, we had a bigger appetite and ability to absorb some of this risk. And so contracting it ended up diluting it and making it more difficult to be able to manage. And what really caught us off guard was that we didn't need to sign waivers. And this is something that we've had conversations with our colleagues all across Canada, that waivers weren't the necessary piece. And instead, we had a responsibility to inform parents of the inherent risk and that they chose to accept it by entering that space. So if you move to the next slide, that's how we mitigated our risks. We also still had to look at this massive piece with an adventure playground, which was materials. We collected large amounts of donated materials. We started early in the season. We planned as the season went on for restocking, and especially at end of season for a major restock. We changed what we asked for over time as we saw what people used more of and less of. And we even approached local hardware stores for some of the tools or some of the disposable and consumable pieces like tarps and tape and ropes. We also had to consider, how do we store this? It required a large amount of space. We ended up going the route of sea cans, but there are outdoor storage sheds. There could have been indoor. You have to think about what some of those larger pieces are that we may have to manage, whether that's bike parts or wood planks, large container bins, even stacks of tire. Then, of course, we had to get it to every site. So we had to think about that transportation. We started with a much smaller van, and by the end, we moved to a very large cube van. To actually get everything into the van, we had to do a bit of a game of Tetris, and we had to make sure that we scheduled enough staff with enough time to safely set it up and take it down every day. And as we get into some of the training we provided for our staff, that safety around lifting and moving those large parts and getting it set in that van so that when you're driving, they're not hazards, was critically important. Even though we're talking about risky play, we're not talking about hazards. We also had to think about the communication and the marketing. We applied our obvious marketing tools. We posted to the City of Calgary website what the schedule was going to be, but we also posted that information and education piece about what this play is and what you can expect when you come to the site. On site, we set up signage that helped make it visible and understanding where you're going. It also set that acknowledgement of risk. And for us, it also set what the role and expectations were of the caregiver. Most importantly, to stay and to facilitate the play, but not to lead the play. What we found over time is we had to create draws as well. So it might be music, it might be bubbles or sidewalk art. In some parks, we even had sculptures created out of some of those loose parts to really draw in the passerbys as they went. Critical to all of this is our play facilitators. These are a unique role, as I said before. They support, but they don't lead that play. And so we knew we had to hire a very different kind of leader, someone who had strong communication skills so they can educate and engage with those parents, that were playful themselves so that they can really engage with the kids, that they could inspire rather than just police play, so they weren't as big about the rules, and that they could encourage that risk. And critical to it all was redirecting the problem solving to the kids, to be able to pose questions like, how do you think this will work? Or what might happen? Or what have you already tried in this situation? And so to get here, we had to do a lot of training with our play facilitators. If we move to the next slide, we'll go into some of that specific training. We integrated our play across community services for our training. And that allowed us to get some of these lessons into all of our programming, not just adventure playgrounds. And so for these leaders, we have standard training we expect in all of our leaders in the City of Calgary, whether you're working for parks or recreation or Calgary neighborhoods. We also have safety training that's specific to the individual programming and sites that you're working in. And so we still did this for this site with a real particular focus on the play materials and loose parts, the tools, and even the site setup and the training. And then specific to their play facilitators, we had to look at how to train them on that play facilitation, on risky play and what it means and why it's important, also on inclusive play. And then with these staff, they held an important role in supporting the evaluation of how our play went. And that's something that we aren't going to focus on today in this program, but we definitely had some elements of evaluation that have shown us some interesting things over the years. We looked at a variety of models of adventure playground. Like I said, we made a choice to make it mobile. What that allowed us to do was, in a geographically large city like Calgary, it let us match what Calgary Parks has for a regional park model, that we want a regional park within a 15-minute drive of anybody's home. So we started with those regional parks. But there's a commonality between all the site selection that we had. Access was important. Also other draws, especially early on in this, to make sure that there was a reason why people were coming to the park, and then we can pull them into our little world. But what we discovered as well is some of the natural components were really critical, whether it was creeks or trees, ponds or hills, even mud. Every site was different, and that is what kept mobile adventure playgrounds more dynamic. We integrated winter play, and as Stephanie spoke to it, we know that playing outside is critically important for Canadians. It keeps us active and engaged through the winter months, and it's not about what the weather is, it's how well you dress for that weather. We did a few models, starting with regional parks. Over time, we moved into our community parks, especially those that are underused by community or spread throughout Calgary. And then finally, we started looking at community complexes. We had an intentional effort to ensure that vulnerable populations, especially those living in low-income housing, were engaged. And so we worked with these sites and with the team that supports the programming and the people living in these housing complexes to make sure that we understood what their needs were. So in these cases, we stayed a little longer than the single week so that we could build relationships and build some of that trust. Through it all, if you move to the next, we had the reality that it is still outdoors. And so not everything is what we expected. In our first year, we had an insanely rainy season. We got rained out 50% of that first year. Winter play meant that we witnessed very different type of play. It was a focus on gross motor skill because the kids' hands were in little mittens. We also had seasons that were impacted by wildfire smoke. And then, of course, this past year, we had COVID-19. And so we definitely had to pivot to be able to meet some of our Alberta Health services requirements. So if we move to the next slide, I have a little bit on the specific pivot that we did for COVID-19. Last summer, we made two major adaptations. First was we focused on community. This brought us into smaller local parks, and it shifted our marketing to community channels like community association newsletters and their specific social media. And rather than doing a citywide approach, this brought in smaller groups, not the big groups that we wanted to prevent during COVID. We also shifted to nature, and we used mostly natural elements, sticks, stones, and stumps, things that your child would have picked up and touched along a walk anyway. And through all of this, we followed all of the COVID safety requirements like hand washing and sanitizing station, masks as they became requirements, and our health screening. Fall saw that we integrated a few more fabricated parks with a focus on binding like ropes that really enhanced those natural play. And what we found is that we had to restrict the play to individual family groups or bubbles. And that interestingly meant that we lost some of the benefit that comes from children interacting with each other and navigating how to play with each other. We're still hopeful that we can bring that back, but for spring and for summer, what we've seen is an increased number of fabricated parts. We've also worked to really encourage those family bubbles. But we're hopeful that as we move forward into fall, we can start to encourage larger groups. We can maybe move back into our regional park, but I do believe that we'll stay in the small local parks. We see that it's a balance in our long-term plan to bring this out across the city and to really engage people in that unstructured play. We've seen the shift in our parents moving from not understanding what this play is to today our parents, they're much more familiar with unstructured play, and they seek out those opportunities to use adventure play as a way to attract people into some of those smaller local parks. Regardless, through the years, as we've seen these adaptations, we've seen our project still meet our desired outcomes of child-led, decreasing those barriers, and making sure that there's positive social interactions with the kids. And over these years, we have made a very concerted effort. As I'd said at the beginning, we knew we're a large municipality and we could take on the bigger risk of trying something like our adventure playgrounds. But we knew we had a responsibility to share our successes, our mistakes, and the lessons that we've had through it. We've offered workshops across Alberta, Canada, the world, Saskatchewan. And as Stephanie mentioned, we have how-to guides that have been developed in collaboration with Alberta Recreation and Parks Association and the University of Alberta. And we've also just recently been able to work with the University of Alberta's team and published a case study in Cities and Health Journal. So with that, I will hand things over to Adam to talk more about that importance of nature.
Well, thank you, Julie. Thank you, Stephanie. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, Adam, for you to do that. And while you get ready, I can remember Julie and I sitting on a picnic table watching our first mobile adventure playground going, oh my God, what if a kid cuts off their arm with our saws? And then we realized that it would take a hell of a lot of effort to be able to do that, and that we were fine. They weren't going to cut their wrists off.
All right. Hello, everybody. Heather, can you see and hear me?
I can see you, hear you, but if you've got a screen to share, I cannot see a screen.
All right, we'll try this again. Thank you.
One
more shot.
Hey,
all right.
Oh yeah, there you go. You're good to go now.
Great. Hey, everybody. It's an honor to actually be here with everyone. This is these are some of my favorite people, the folks that get me excited about doing the work again. Because a lot of times it's on the slog. So I'm going to start. You know, we're sort of slogging through bureaucratic process when all of this is just about goofing off and getting kids to goof off with us. To be perfectly honest, that's the core of some of the most important stuff that I might do in a day. So anyone who's actually, because I can't see the participants, anyone who's still paying attention, first, I'm grateful. Second, get ready on your chat because I'm going to have a question for you and I want to see what you have to say about it. So I want you to go back to your first and favorite experience when you were outside. I want everyone just to think for a second about what that was. And for most of us, it's not very hard to remember what that was outside. I'm showing a picture of mine here. Obviously, it's not really me because it's probably a black and white photo of me because I am that old. But this was it. I was up the creek, and I was quite literally up the creek when I was a kid. I knew where the blue clay was and the red clay was, and I knew where to get the stuff to make the really cool forts and where the fossils were kept. And there was an ongoing battle between us and the other people making their forts. Well, we would steal their stuff and then remake our fort, and our fort would be bigger and better, and theirs would be different again, and then they'd come back and remake it. And when I think about that moment, it's pretty clear to me now when I'm following the research as part of the systematic lit review on outdoor risky play. And some of the evidence that came out of there was interesting to me, which is the importance of sensory engagement for our kids in play. If you want them to collaborate, if you want them to get in, if you want their brains engaged. So I'm asking you on the chat, I'll tell you mine. I don't need to know all of your experiences, but this is the number of senses that I hit of the 5 senses. So put a number up into the chat for me of the number of senses that were hit by your favorite experience. That was mine in this one. I mean, you can see that in this one. So I am interested in anyone's view of that. Now, this is generally what I'd call a cheat question, and I ask it each time. And the reason I ask it is because the cheat is that genuinely, most of us, if not all of us, have 4 or 5 senses hit in order for it to be our favorite experience. It's just the way our brains are wired. If you're not having a fully sensory experience, it's probably not your favorite. And if you think about most of us, I would also put it to you that most of you didn't have a parent in that picture either. And play has changed drastically for kids. For us, we want to see something alive in their play space in order to show that they can have that sensory experience. You don't know this, but that's Leo, my kid on the top right, and you can't tell, but Leo's invisible right now. And I know this because he told me, he said, I am mulch. And I have yet to see a kid say, I am asphalt. That's not a thing. So the sensory experience actually gets the imagination going. And then there's a whack of stats, and I'm not going to go through every one of them because, frankly, there's just too many to count. Some of the interesting stuff right now and the stuff that's getting worse, recent stat that I heard, now 4 years ago, the Kaiser Family Foundation did their work on screen time, and the average screen time for an 8-year-old in Canada and the US was about 52.5 hours a week at that point. So if you think about that sensory engagement and how important that was, that's a crazy number. This year, it's over 75 hours a week for an 8-year-old on average. So if you're thinking that we got better because outside is better for us, it actually changed in the other direction. Now, my father is known as on Wikipedia as the father of mucosal immunology, and he sits on the group that makes the decisions on who wins the Nobel Prize and things like that, an esteemed immunologist. And I was told when I was a kid, I wasn't allowed to wash my hands before dinner. That was my normal. And I can't imagine what a kid would think of me now. But there is a critical lack of the macro and microorganisms that are required for a healthy immune system hitting their systems right now. And that's a big deal, and it's going to affect things in the future. So, and yet when we see playgrounds, and especially in the last 20 years, when we see playgrounds, they haven't been built really to think about that sensory engagement piece. That's not the norm. So our work has been to try and regain as much of that sensory engagement as we can. I sort of giggle because these things at the top, the blobs, are referred to as their forest tree series in the catalog. I always imagine there's like a Lorax crying or something at the bottom of this thing. So that's not it. And we're seeing things increasingly look natural, and that's a normal outcome of this. You're not fooling your immune system by something that looks like it was natural at one point. My favorite picture, if you want to see this one, you just type in elephant pooping slide, and you'll get all the angles of this wonderful creation. What we're really trying to do is get that sensory engagement back. And I love, Julie, that you got into bringing nature out as part of the response to the pandemic more, and some of the loose parts that you would use for this. What we're finding is that the level of engagement for the kids does increase the more sensory that engagement is. I'm not saying you have to have a rotten log in every one, although there is a school board right now in New Brunswick who has decided that they're going to put a rotten log in every school ground, which I think is awesome, because it can be interpreted in a different way every time. The less prescriptive we get about play, the better the outcomes for that play and the better the engagement is. So a couple of before and afters. This is in an early year space. This is a standard before. It's pretty bland in terms of the experience. And in terms of the sensory experience, it's absolutely one type of experience. The textures are exactly the same the whole way across. When we look at a space like that, we think, how can we get as many different surfaces as we possibly can? If you ever hear from someone that one surface is the best surface for a playground, they are wrong. By definition, they have to be wrong, because the answer is there are 5. There have to be 5 different surfaces, because 65% of the engagement of the kids at playground age happens within the first 12 inches off the ground. So if we don't change that up, if we don't vary that up and think about how to change that around, we actually don't get to the best parts of play. And when we're thinking about how to plant that, that's a huge value to us. If you think about the roam rates of kids now, average roam rate when I was a kid, when I played in the creek, that would have been about 6 miles. Average roam rate for an 8-year-old in North America right now is about 150 yards. So the spaces where they play, the spaces that we curate as cities and as rec organizations, they matter. And the plant material matters. And it matters to my dad, the immunologist, because if we don't have this stuff, they don't engage in the same way. You want to reduce bullying rates by 60% right off the hop, you plant heavily and the bullying rates go down. There is a physical and environmental shift that goes on. And in terms of the CSA or the ASTM regulations, well, following that stuff doesn't apply to that, thank the Lord, because I've never really been able to make a lot of sense of it, even though I've sat on some of the subcommittees to try and figure out how to do this stuff. The thing you should be proud of is that in Canada, we mature 6 months faster than Americans. So as a dual citizen, I'm happy about my Canadian side. You head to Europe and the standard changes, so they do crazy stuff. If you look at some, this is a playground on the bottom left. That's trampolines, and the impact rated surface is cobblestone. I love how calm the girl is who's flipping upside down on that swing. And the one on the top left is a favorite. That's it's referred to as the child launcher. I mean, I don't know what it's really referred to, but I say child launcher. And the dad jumps up and down until kids cry, I think, and just get shot in the air. None of that is okay to do here. What's fascinating to me is that if these are the parks that they play in from an early time, they become better at assessing risk and their injury rates are not worse than ours. So the things that we think are risky really are about providing the challenges to those kids early enough that they get good at this stuff, that they get better at assessing risk. And those challenges also come out with another really big one for us. The most important one for us, which is tough right now, is spontaneous social collaboration. That one matters to me. That is when kids play with each other across gender, across ethnicity, and across physical ability without parents or adults intervening. And we need these opportunities. This is how they learn about socialization. This is how language develops. And it gets better with sensory engagement. You will never find on a post and platform single plastic thing a place where there is a 10-year-old girl reading a book and a 4-year-old boy in the background crawling along behind brother and a 2.5-year-old going over to take a look while an 11-year-old boy is about to jump off. That doesn't happen without a sensory engagement portion. And every one of those kids is fully cognitively engaged in that moment. So how do we get there? It's not as simple as just saying, here you go, and plonk it in. This is one in North Battleford that we worked on. And we worked with the community on the design for some time. It wasn't a quick process. The boulders came from all around that local area. The local First Nations group came together and as part of this, and they installed a teepee. We had a group here in Ontario say, great, we want to get a teepee. We love that playground. And I said, you cannot have a teepee because teepees are not here in Ontario. A teepee is not something that happens here. It's a wigwam here. So if we're working with First Nations groups, we have to take the time to listen. We have to have them be part of the plan and have them be part of that implementation as well. And we still get lovely emails from people who are participating in this. All of those rocks ended up donated from a local group, or they worked very hard with us to make sure that the price was as low as it could be. And this park got a lot better by working with the community to make it happen. This is one that we did in, this one's Holland, Michigan. Now, what I loved about this one was not the thing itself. The thing itself is great and it's cool. And we won an award for learning landscapes in the US, and that was awesome. My favorite bit of this was when I showed the kids this picture after we opened and I said, tell me about your favorite place. Half of those kids pointed to the forest behind this. Half of those kids didn't even look at this landscape. I think at our best, these playgrounds are what is provided by the forest. I think that grown-ups get in the way. I think that we kind of suck, frankly, at this stuff. And we got to be better at getting people closer to that full, authentic experience that some of your favorite experiences were in. So how do we add the sideways trees? And how do we add those natural elements and those sensory engagements? Because, you know, this was my kid's playground when I got to send my kid to the school. And if we take away that lens of child development of sensory engagement, we make bad decisions. I mean, this is crazy. This is on the right-hand side there. That's Sam, who's now responsible for 1 to 3 on the hopscotch, while his friend finishes the game because some grown-up refused to pay attention to play as a priority, and the fence went in the wrong place. So I'm going to ask you on this one, which of these 3, I'm going to show you 3 pictures. Here's number 1. And here's number 2, and here's number 3. So I'll go through that again. I'm going to go back up and then back down. And what I want you to do, if you can, just use the chat for a second and pump in the number that you think the kids stayed at the longest of these 3. You had the most kids staying for the longest time.
Adam, I'm going to let you know that it's 12:58.
Perfect.
So Marnie, I don't know if you need us to wrap up, so I'll just give Adam the minute.
Perfect. Well, I'm just about done, so that's the right amount of time. The answer, of course, is number 3. The more sensory the engagement, the longer they stay. And that is what always happens. And even what that does is it works on grown-ups too. The groups that we work with, I'm going to turn that off. Working with grown-ups too, they find a way. This is a Steinway grand piano builder whose favorite thing to do is now make these. So it's an engagement for adults too. I'm gonna end with one thing, which is, for me, the best spaces for these kids are the ones where all 5 senses are hit equally. And that's because, well, if you do that well, you get to get the last one. And the last one is that sense of wonder, that moment where you feel small next to something big, where you feel like you're part of something important. And where, for me, Sam stood still for 30 seconds, my kid, and he never stands still for 30 seconds, but he looked up for 30 seconds, and that has to be honored as a meaningful experience for our kids.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you
Wonderful.
all. Just brings me right back. Arnie, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Heather. And thank you, Heather, Stephanie, Julie, and Adam, for that great presentation. I'm always inspired by the information, ideas, and examples that are shared. Certainly, you had mentioned, we all have a role to play, and I think you've provided us with lots to think about and things that we can think about after today that maybe we can do together. I recognize that we are right at the 1 o'clock hour. We will continue with a Q&A, but I do understand that for some of you, you may need to leave to another appointment or another meeting or something that may be scheduled. So with that, I do thank you for the work that you do, and thank you to all the presenters. What we all do matters. So I thank you for having your lunch with us today, and let you know that you've got this. When it comes to getting kids active outdoors, we've all got this together. So I thank those who may have to leave. But Kim, I think we will take a few minutes, probably 5, to do a Q&A here, if everyone's okay, presenters and everyone. If you have some questions, we'll just stay on and answer a few of those questions as we can. Thank you.
Sure. Well, I had a question first off for Julie. You talked about, I think it was you, talked about contracting out the risk. Can you talk a little bit about what you mean?
So one of the pieces that we looked at was that we could just bring in a firm that could deliver the adventure playgrounds themselves, or do components of it. So maybe manage the materials or train the play facilitators. And we were told to, as much as possible, keep that in-house. In the end, what we found was that our risk team, when we talked about pieces like, say, training for tool use, we first turned to in parks where we have staff who use saws and other components. We looked at internally what training we had for them. And then when we didn't have that training available internally, we then were able to turn to an external agency to be able to help us with some of that tool use training. So it was really a desire to sort of keep it in-house so that we're not taking the risk that falls with our organization and transferring it over to someone else, but then we're the ones who actually deliver on that risk later on. So then who has that component? Does that answer the question on what we meant by contracting? Perfect.
Great. We have a question from Julie. She's wondering how you get the buy-in from elected officials and councils to go ahead and assume the risk and liability.
Maybe I think Stephanie talked about it. I think Julie and I were such a force to be reckoned with, and we were connected with Adam, we were connected with Tim Gill. We had such passion and enthusiasm, and I think that's just what galvanized us to move forward. I think people were just like, okay, we need to get out of their way. They know what they're doing, and away we go. And we surrounded ourselves with people who saw our vision and could see it, and the evidence was compelling. So whether the position statement was, that it was so compelling, that sense of urgency that Stephanie talked about was there.
Great.
And I think what I would layer on to Heather's answer too is that we were already given direction by council to create play spaces for children. We just had always looked at it in more traditional play spaces, like what Adam sort of spoke about, those very sanitized and smooth surfaced ones. We also had the council approval to do programming and engage with community in a variety of different ways. So we had those permission spaces, and then Heather and I just kind of manipulated what that meant in this context. Right. So we built off of those.
And if I may just add one quick bit to that, they came at this with data, and the stuff is fear-based, right? The stuff that the negative about play is fear-based, and the solution is data-based. And it wasn't just, I mean, data backed with the passion is what gets you across the line. So I always, it's important when someone says they have a problem to ask exactly what they're basing that on. I will promise you there is a good bit of data that shows that this is a better solution.
And the work that Dr. Mariana Brusoni does is has transformed this country and the world in terms of the work that she does with risky play.
Right. Great. Well, I think the last question Leah had, Heather, you answered it in the Q&A, but it might be worthwhile getting onto the recording. She asked about what happens if kids come to the adventure park without parents.
I'm trying to remember. We did, most of our programming was littles, I think, if I remember correctly. And those that came without parents, I think they were fine. I don't think we didn't turn them away. And we did have one, we would connect with schools, and schools would bring their kids. And we had one school, Julie, I think you remember this, they had one school and the teacher and the kids just ran on full force to these poor group of moms and their littles and just overtook everything. And it was like the Tasmanian devil. And we went, okay, whoa, chikai, chikai, and just stopped and just said, please, you know, but I don't think we turned anybody away.
No.
At all.
And part of the answer that was typed to that as well was that we were asked to look at precedents. And so the precedents that we looked at was children of a certain age are allowed to attend a swimming pool by themselves. And we have kids are allowed to go to a playground, and we don't regulate whether a child is at a playground with a parent. And the same thing with skate parks. And so we were able to look at each of those precedents and find, how do we manage within those? And that was enough to satisfy our team within our risk. And Heather said it, like, we didn't have a lot of injuries over the course of this. We had a couple of moments where we sat back going, oh my gosh, there's too many kids at once. And we pulled back tools. We just were able to manage at that point what we put out that was going to shift from being a risk to being a hazard.
Adam, how many seconds? I think because I phoned you that day and said, oh my God, this is what happened. How many seconds for the Tasmanian devil to happen before they go, I've found my place? How much? I can't remember what you told me.
Well, yeah, so we would hold them back for the first 9 to 12 minutes. And somewhere in that 9 to 12 minute mark, when we were physically holding teachers back from running to stop Johnny, because, oh my gosh, Johnny's got a stick. And but in that moment between 9 and 12 minutes, you would see their entire demeanor change, and they would hit a calm because Johnny found his place and he found his thing that he wanted to do, and it was sensory and it was engaging. And the more loose parts that we had, the better and the quicker that transition from frenetic to focused play. So there, it happens, doesn't matter where we are. We've done this in the UK, we've done this in Australia and New Zealand. Human beings seem to have a metronome that's equal as a human race, where you know, it's all new for a minute. If you think about it, recess is the perfectly wrong amount of time. If you think about that number. So we need to stretch recess in order to get to the good stuff and have the teachers have the good experience out of it as well.
Great. Well, I think that's all we've got for questions. So I'll turn it back to you, Marnie.
Okay, thank you. Well, I could just stay and listen and talk about this all day. It's always fun to be amongst colleagues and champions and mentors that all enjoy the same things and are all doing this for all the same reasons. So certainly I can't thank all of you enough today for being part of this. And so just to sign off saying this is a wrap on our final presentation of our Leaders Series. Once again, thank you to Heather, Adam, Stephanie, and Julie for this presentation and for all that you do to continuously support more kids to be active in the outdoors with their families. We can't thank you enough for that. And it was mentioned again, what we all do does matters. And so that's what we thank all of you that participated today and came online and was part of this webinar. We say thank you to you, because by signing on and listening today, that just reaffirms that for all of us today. It was another great event, and I certainly learned a few things, and I hope you did too. We will have a link to all of the resources on our website in the Leader Series area. It will include some of the outdoor play resources as well, so we'll ensure that we've got those accessible to you and that make it easy for you to connect. If you are interested in hearing more about the Saskatchewan community that shared their personal experience up in North Battleford of the Natural Playground, please check out our Leader Series podcast with Colleen Sabro, found in our Leader section as well, as she shares their experience and how it has impacted their community in North Battleford. Over the next few months, our outdoor play work group will be putting together a series of webinars on adventure play. So we encourage you to watch for more information coming your way. So once again, we thank all of you for spending your lunch hour with us. Thank you to all of our presenters today for spending your lunch hour with us. And again, getting kids more active, you've got this. So thank you all very much. Take care and stay well.